What happens when a carefully orchestrated daytime interview erupts into a moment so raw, so unexpected, that the entire studio seems to stop breathing? What happens when Justin Timberlake, usually polished, composed, and media-trained, finds himself face-to-face with a question he never saw coming, and Whoopi Goldberg isn't willing to back down? Before we take you into the room where this confrontation unfolded, make sure you subscribe to Stage View and hit like, comment, and share to keep this channel growing. What you're about to hear is the kind of moment that daytime television usually tries to hide. But today, we're pulling back the curtain. The lights inside the studio felt a little harsher that morning, the kind that washed the set in a gleaming gold, almost too bright for comfort. The View's audience was buzzing, a low hum of excitement that grew louder with every passing minute. Justin Timberlake wasn't just another guest, he was the headline. A major comeback performance, a new album release, and whispers of old controversies resurfacing. The ingredients for the kind of interview that promised tension, even before he stepped onto the stage. He walked in with that familiar half-smile, the one that had charmed millions over decades. But there was something else behind it today, something tighter in his jaw, something colder in the edges of his eyes. The audience applauded, louder than usual, and he waved once quickly before taking his seat across from the hosts. Sunny shifted her cards. Joy leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. Sarah offered him a friendly smile. But it was Whoopi, calm, unreadable, whose gaze lingered a second too long. Cameras rolled. The applause faded. The air thickened. It began gently, the way it always does. A question about creative inspiration. A laugh about working in the studio again. A brief story about touring. Justin was smooth, confident, rehearsed. He leaned comfortably against his chair, glancing at the audience as though he had everything under control. But then Sunny set her cards down. "Justin," she said, her voice deceptively measured, "you've talked a lot about growth and reflection, but a lot of people feel there are things in your past that you've never fully addressed." There it was. The shift. The first crack in the room's atmosphere. Justin's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Well," he began, "I think I've addressed a lot of things over the years." "Some would say you avoided them," Joy chimed in, her tone sharper than the others expected. Justin inhaled, slow and heavy. "I don't think that's fair." The audience murmured. A few heads turned. A few people leaned forward. But Whoopi, she didn't move. Didn't blink. She was waiting. Sunny continued. "People still talk about the way certain situations were handled with Brittany." And just like that, the entire room tightened. The studio audience went still. A camera operator subtly shifted position. A producer behind the panel pressed her earpiece closer, whispering something urgent. Justin's smile vanished. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "I came here to talk about my music. My work. I'm not here to rehash 20-year-old conversations." He tried to laugh. Tried to shake it off. But no one on the panel smiled back. "It's not 20 years old for people who were impacted by it," Sunny replied. "And it's definitely not old for the fans who still feel hurt by how things played out." Justin leaned forward now, his elbows on his knees. "I'm not going to sit here and be villainized on national TV." Whoopi spoke for the first time, calm, steady, but unmistakably firm. "No one is villainizing you," she said. "But if you're going to present yourself as someone who has grown, then we have to talk about what that growth came from. Growth doesn't come out of nowhere." The audience gasped softly, collectively, as if one breath had been sucked from every seat in the room. Justin stared at Whoopi. The tension between them was electric, the kind that could only exist when two people were absolutely certain they were right. "Whoopi," he said, trying to keep his voice even, "I respect you, but I'm not going to let this turn into a lecture." "It's not a lecture," she replied, her tone low enough to freeze the studio. "It's accountability." A hush fell over the entire stage. Justin shifted in his chair, a subtle flicker of annoyance crossing his face, the kind that was rarely seen publicly. He lifted one hand, as though gesturing to dismiss the direction of the conversation. "You're talking like I haven't apologized," he said. "Like I haven't tried to set things right." Joy leaned back in her chair. "You apologized when the documentaries came out," she said. "Not before. Because that's when." And even then, Sunny cut in, a lot of people felt that apology wasn't really for them. It felt pressured. The words echoed, bouncing off the set walls. Justin exhaled hard. "So what do you want?" he said, lifting both hands. "Do you want me to sit here and grovel? Is that what's going to make people feel better?" The moment hung, suspended in a way that made everyone, the hosts, the audience, the crew, feel that the interview had reached a point where nothing would return to normal. Justin, Whoopi said quietly, nobody wants you to grovel. What we want is honesty. Because right now, you're giving us PR answers. And we all know that. The shift in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a trap. It was a challenge. Justin's face tightened. His voice rose just slightly. You think I'm not being honest? I think, Whoopi replied, that you're trying very hard not to be uncomfortable. A murmur moved through the audience. Justin shook his head, leaned back, and crossed his arms. So this is ambush TV now, he said. This is what The View does. Got it. Sarah tried to intervene, placing a hand gently on the table. Let's all take a breath, she said softly. We're not trying to. But Justin cut her off. No, I get it. I know what this show is. You want your moment. You want your soundbite. Fine. Whoopi's eyebrows lifted, but her expression didn't change. She stayed grounded, unmoving, like a force of gravity itself. You came here, she said slowly, to promote your story. And we're asking about your story. All of it. Not just the parts that make you look good. Justin's voice snapped louder now. I'm not here to be disrespected. And I'm not here, Whoopi fired back, to pretend you didn't hurt people. A shockwave. Actual, audible gasps from the crowd. The tension was no longer simmering. It was boiling, burning, alive. The two stared at each other for a moment that felt endless. Every camera in the room zoomed in, capturing every twitch, every breath, every second. Justin leaned forward, lowered his voice again, and said something so quietly the microphones barely caught it. You're out of line. Whoopi broke into a slow, almost imperceptible smile. The kind that came not from humor, but from certainty. You don't get to tell me that, she said. The studio audience erupted. Not in applause, but in the startled, exhilarated gasp of people witnessing something they never thought they'd see on live television. A tension like static electricity flickered across the room. Even the crew froze behind the cameras, their hands still on the controls, eyes wide. Justin looked away for a long moment, his jaw set hard, his breathing tight. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but steady. I didn't come here for this, he said. I came in good faith. And so did we, Whoopi replied. But good faith means telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, neither backing down, neither blinking. Then the audience applauded, a messy, divided applause that carried tension rather than support. The energy in the room shifted again, this time into something unpredictable. Something volatile. Something that promised the next moment would be even more explosive. And it would be, because Justin wasn't done. And neither was Whoopi. The applause died unevenly, tapering into an uneasy silence. Justin shifted in his seat, the kind of restless movement that betrayed a man trying to restrain something sharp just beneath the surface. It wasn't anger alone. It was humiliation, frustration, a sense of being ganged up on in a place he thought he had control. A producer off-camera signaled for a commercial break, but Whoopi held up one hand, a small, subtle gesture. Not yet. The moment was too alive, too volatile, too real to cut away from. She wasn't going to let it dissolve into makeup retouches and corporate instructions. Justin noticed. Of course, he said bitterly. We're staying on this. Because this is good TV, right? Sometimes, Whoopi replied. Good TV is just the truth finally showing up. A few audience members murmured in agreement. Someone whispered, wow, loud enough that a microphone picked it up. Justin's jaw twitched. He looked down at his hands for a moment, rubbing his thumb across a ring he wore, a movement that seemed more grounding than anything else. Let me say something, he finally said. And I want to say it without being interrupted. Sonny nodded. Go ahead. Whoopi folded her hands. We're listening. The air thinned again. Justin took a breath so deep it lifted his shoulders. I made mistakes, he said. A lot of them. I know that. I've said it. I've acknowledged it. But it feels like no matter what I do, no matter what I try to move past, people want to drag me back into a version of myself that doesn't exist anymore. His voice cracked on that last word. Not dramatically, but enough for anyone paying attention to notice. I'm not the guy I was at 21, he continued, his eyes scanning the room. I'm not the guy who made stupid decisions and didn't understand how the world worked. I'm a husband, a father. I've lived life. I've learned. A hush fell over the audience. This isn't about punishing you, Sonny said softly. But people want sincerity, not a press release. And you think I'm not sincere? Justin shot back. I think, Sunny replied, picking her words carefully, that your sincerity only shows when you're cornered. He laughed, but it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief wrapped in irritation. Cornered, Justin repeated. That's how you see this? Isn't it? Joy asked. You came here knowing this would come up. No, I didn't, he snapped. Your producers told me we'd be discussing the album, the creative process, maybe some broad questions about the industry. Not a tribunal about my past. Sarah opened her mouth as if to speak, but Justin kept going. I've done the work. I've put in the work. I've taken accountability privately, with the people who actually matter. That landed heavier than he realized. Whoopi reacted first. So the public doesn't matter? She asked, her voice calm but loaded. That's not what I said. That's what you implied. Justin shook his head, frustrated. You're twisting this. No, Whoopi said firmly. I'm hearing you. And you're saying that the only accountability that counts is the kind nobody can see. The crowd reacted with a mix of applause and murmurs. Justin's eyes flickered, his composure thinning once more. Whoopi, he said slowly, you're making this sound like I owe the world my entire soul. You're a public figure, she replied. You profit from the public. You build a life from their support. So yes, you owe them honesty. Not perfection. Honesty. Justin leaned back again, exhaling sharply. Honesty doesn't mean letting myself be ripped apart every time I walk into a studio. No one is ripping you apart, Sunny said. We're asking for conversation. Justin turned his gaze on her, a sharp, pointed stare. Then start talking to me like a human being. Not a headline. A ripple went through the audience. But before Sunny could respond, Whoopi stood. Not abruptly, not aggressively, but purposefully. The studio went silent. The movement felt ceremonial, even mythic, the kind of gesture that announces the next words will matter. Justin blinked, taken aback. What are you doing? Whoopi placed her hands gently on the table and leaned forward. I'm telling you something you need to hear, she said. Not as a host, not as a celebrity, as a person who's lived long enough to know the difference between self-defense and self-awareness. Justin swallowed hard. You're a grown man, she continued. So act like one. No more PR armor. No more deflecting. Just say it. Say what you really feel. Justin stared at her, stunned. Then something shifted, something almost imperceptible. His breathing slowed. His shoulders dropped. His eyes softened, just barely. And then quietly he said, I feel tired. A murmur spread across the audience. Justin continued, his voice suddenly lighter, almost fragile. I feel like no matter what I do, people don't want to see me as someone who's changed. They want the old narrative because it fits nicer in their head. He paused. And it hurts. The hosts looked at each other. Even Joy softened. But Whoopi didn't sit down. She kept her gaze on him, measured, unwavering. That, she said gently, is honesty. Justin looked at her, breathing a little easier. But, she added, it's only half of it. He tensed again. Half. The other half, Whoopi said, is acknowledging not just your pain, but the pain you caused. Justin hesitated, visibly. It was as though a wall reappeared, brick by brick. I've tried, he said quietly. Try right now, Whoopi said. The room went still. Justin's lips parted, but no words came out. He looked down again, wrestling with something invisible. Pride, fear, defensiveness, regret. All of it. Sunny finally said, Justin, nobody here wants to punish you. We're giving you space to be real. But Justin shook his head, staring at the table. I am real, he whispered. I just don't want to open old wounds. Sometimes, Whoopi said softly, that's the only way they heal. The silence stretched. Then Justin looked up, and his expression was different. Not angry, not annoyed. Something more complicated. Fine, he said. Ask your question. Sunny leaned forward. Do you regret how you handled things in the past? With the people you hurt. Not the press, not the fans, the people. Justin's throat bobbed. But before he could answer, a voice from the audience shouted. Just say yes. Laughter rippled through the crowd, nervous, sharp, unpredictable. Justin turned sharply in the direction of the voice. It's not that simple, he snapped. The studio reacted, some in shock, some in awe. Whoopi stepped in again. Justin. No, he said, cutting her off now. I'm done sugarcoating things. You want honesty? Here it is. He stood. The audience gasped. Justin Timberlake, standing live on daytime television, visibly shaken and ready to unleash something. Here it is, he repeated. since everyone wants the unfiltered truth. The room braced itself, because what he was about to say would change everything. Justin stood there, breathing hard, shoulders tense, eyes darting across the audience as if he were facing an entire arena instead of a daytime TV crowd. The cameras adjusted instantly, zooming up from below, capturing the dramatic angle. The rise of a man who looked like he'd just broken past the polished shell he'd spent years perfecting. Whoopi didn't move. She watched him the way a seasoned performer watches a co-star who's just gone off script, calmly, knowingly, but with a gravity that made the air feel heavier. "Justin," Sarah said softly, rising partway from her seat, "you don't have to." "No," he snapped, "I do." The audience collectively leaned back. The tension was metallic, almost tangible. It pressed against the skin. Justin pointed toward the panel, not accusingly, but desperately. "You all keep talking about accountability, about honesty, about what I owe people, but nobody ever asks what all of this costs me." His voice shook, not weakly, but intensely. Joy crossed her arms. "You're a millionaire with a platform. The cost is..." But Justin cut her off louder this time. "It's emotional. It's mental. It's watching my past get dragged out again and again like entertainment." The audience bristled. Some nodded. Some frowned. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing slightly, a man trying to outrun the storm swirling inside him. "Every time I take a step forward, someone pulls me back. A documentary. A headline. A viral clip. A panel on a show like this." He gestured at the set, frustration spilling from every motion. "And you sit here wanting the raw truth, but the truth is I'm exhausted. I'm tired of performing emotional repentance on cue. I'm tired of being the villain in a story that wasn't mine alone." Sonny's eyebrows lifted. "Are you saying you share no responsibility?" Justin turned to her sharply. "Don't twist my words. I'm saying I'm tired of being the only one held responsible. There were other people involved in those situations. Other decisions. Other voices. But somehow I became the symbol of everything." The room reacted with surprised murmurs. It was the first time he'd actually pointed toward the broader context, something he had avoided for years. Whoopi leaned forward slightly. "Then say their names." Justin froze. The entire room gasped. Sarah whispered, "Whoopi," under her breath, warning, pleading, but Whoopi didn't break eye contact. "You want balance. Say their names." Justin's jaw trembled, the first sign of actual vulnerability cracking through the anger. "That's not fair," he whispered. "It's the truth," Whoopi replied. "You want honesty? Start with honesty about who else was involved." Justin looked away, blinking rapidly. "I'm not dragging other people through this." "You already did," Whoopi said. 20 years ago." A loud, sharp gasp shot through the audience like lightning. Justin flinched, a visible hit he wasn't ready for. For a moment, he looked like he might walk off. His body turned, steps half-formed. A stage manager beside the cameras tensed, ready to follow him. But then Justin stopped, shoulders slumping. He returned to face them. "This is insane," he said, his voice cracking. "You ask for honesty, but when I give it, it's never enough. It's never the right kind. It's never in the right tone. Because the truth isn't a performance," Whoopi said softly. "It's not something you weaponize when it suits you." "This isn't a weapon," Justin shot back. "It's my life." "And theirs," Whoopi countered. Another wave of murmurs. Justin moved back toward his chair, but didn't sit. He stood behind it, gripping the backrest with both hands, knuckles whitening. "I'm not that kid anymore," he said. "And I'm tired of everything I do being judged against mistakes I made when I was barely old enough to rent a car." "People change," Sarah said gently. "We know that. But healing takes acknowledgement," Sonny added. "Real acknowledgement." Justin's eyes flicked to Sonny, hurt, conflicted, defensive. "I apologized," he whispered. "I meant it." Sonny nodded slowly. "Then say it again." Justin stared at her. "Why? So you can get a viral clip? So the show can trend for a week?" "No," Whoopi said firmly. "So you can let go of the bitterness that's poisoning you right now." He blinked again, and for the first time, something inside him faltered. His anger drained slightly, replaced by a hollow, fragile exhaustion. "You think I'm bitter?" he asked. "I think," Whoopi replied, "you're scared." That hit him like a physical push. Justin looked away again, swallowing hard. His throat bobbed. His breath shook. The audience sat frozen, silent. Nobody even dared cough. Justin closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a kind of reluctant clarity. "You want the truth?" he asked quietly. Whoopi nodded. "Always." Justin looked directly at her now. Not at the cameras, not at the audience, but at her. I regret it, he said. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Sunny inhaled sharply. Joy's eyes widened. Sarah's lips parted. Whoopi's expression softened, barely, but it softened. Justin continued, voice trembling. All of it. The way I handled things. The way I talked about people. The way I let the media twist things without stepping in. I was young. I was selfish. I was stupid. The audience murmured, softer this time, less shocked and more empathetic. But, he said, raising his voice again, that doesn't mean I deserve to be crucified for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean I deserve to be dragged anytime someone needs a headline. His eyes glistened. It wasn't an actor's glisten. It was pressure, pent-up emotion cracking open in front of millions. Whoopi exhaled slowly. There it is. Justin lowered his head. And I'm sorry. Not because of pressure. Not because of documentaries. Not because of interviews. I'm sorry because I look back and I see a guy who couldn't see past himself. A few audience members clapped, hesitant, gentle, supportive. But Justin wasn't finished. And I'm scared, he admitted, voice trembling. I'm scared that no matter what I do, no matter how much I grow, people won't let me move forward. That sentence broke something open in the room. Empathy, conflict, confusion, relief, all swirling together. But Whoopi's face didn't soften further. Instead, she stood slowly, mirroring him, leveling the emotional weight between them. Thank you for saying that, she said. But accountability doesn't end with fear. It begins with understanding. Justin looked at her, exhausted, drained, vulnerable. What else do you want from me? He asked quietly. Not angrily. Not defensively. Just human. Whoopi took one step closer, small but symbolic. I want you, she said, to stop seeing accountability as punishment and start seeing it as release. Justin swallowed. Hard. Because once you stop fighting it, Whoopi added, you'll finally be free. And for the first time since the interview began, Justin Timberlake didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He didn't bristle. He stood there, silent, breathing, processing. But the moment wasn't over. Because the audience wasn't ready to let the tension dissolve. Someone shouted, say the whole truth. And that lit the fuse again. Justin stiffened, visibly. Whoopi inhaled, preparing herself. What happened next would become one of the most replayed moments in daytime television history. The shout from the audience, sharp, unexpected, cutting through the studio like a blade, froze Justin mid-breath. His shoulders tightened, his fingers curled against the back of his chair, and a flicker of the earlier anger returned to his face. Not wild, not unrestrained, but wounded, volatile, electrically alive beneath the surface. Say the whole truth. The words echoed again in Justin's mind, louder than the microphones, louder than the audience. He turned slowly toward the direction of the voice. A woman in the third row, sitting forward in her seat, eyes bright with conviction, not malice. He didn't shout back this time. He didn't lash. He simply stared, chest rising and falling as though he were standing on the edge of a cliff. The studio seemed to shrink, every inch of it pulling taut with expectation. Sunny adjusted her posture, uncertain whether to intervene. Joy had lowered her sarcastic veneer, watching with a seriousness rarely seen on her face. Sarah looked torn between sympathy and concern. A stage manager raised a hand, silently asking if they should cut to commercial. Whoopi didn't move. Not yet, because she knew, everyone knew, the moment wasn't ready to break. Justin turned back toward the panel, his voice barely above a whisper. You want the whole truth? The woman in the audience nodded. So did three others. The room hummed with energy, restless, almost hungry, but not cruel. They wanted something real. Something raw. Something that didn't sound like a sentence crafted by a PR rep in a conference room. Justin ran a trembling hand over his face. The whole truth, he repeated, as though trying to decide if he had the strength to speak it. He looked at Whoopi. She met his gaze without flinching. He took a breath. It wasn't all me. A ripple shot through the crowd. Justin swallowed. I made mistakes. I've said that. I've owned that. But I wasn't the only one who did things wrong. I wasn't the only one who was young and confused and reacting instead of thinking. But when everything happened, when the headlines exploded, the world needed someone to blame. And I was the easiest target. Sunny's eyebrows rose. Joy leaned forward. Sarah exhaled softly. The audience shifted, some skeptical, some supportive, many stunned. Justin continued. I didn't step in. I didn't correct the narrative. I didn't protect people I should have protected. I didn't protect myself either. I let the world decide who I was. And once they did, I stayed silent because I thought that was what everyone wanted. He paused, eyes glassy with unshed emotion. The truth is, I was scared to say anything. Scared it would make things worse. Scared it would hurt people more. Scared it would make me look selfish. So I stayed quiet. For years. And that silence turned into guilt. And that guilt became my shadow. The audience was motionless. Justin looked down at the table, his voice growing softer. I didn't realize that silence could be its own kind of harm. A beat. Whoopi finally spoke. Now that is the truth. Justin looked up at her, really looked at her, and for the first time there was no defensiveness in his expression. No walls. No armor. Just a man who had finally said something he had been carrying for far too long. But Whoopi wasn't done. She took a breath, stood, and addressed the audience. You see what happens when someone stops fighting the truth and lets it breathe, she said. This is accountability. This is humanity. This is what conversation is supposed to look like. The audience broke into applause, not thunderous, not sensational, but warm. Genuine. Justin sat back down slowly, as if his legs finally gave out. The tension in his shoulders eased for the first time since the interview began. But the moment, the balance, didn't settle just yet. Because Joy, ever the provocateur, leaned in and asked, So what do you want people to do now? Just forgive you. The audience tensed again, but Justin didn't bristle this time. He shook his head. No, I want them to see me. Not the version the media built. Not the villain. Not the untouchable celebrity. Just me. A person who messed up and learned and grew. And is still learning. Still growing. Do you think they will? Sarah asked softly. Justin let out a small, weary laugh. I don't know, but I can't control that. I can only control what I do moving forward. Another murmur. Softer. Thoughtful. Whoopi nodded slowly. Now that is accountability. But just as the room began to relax, as the emotional storm calmed, another voice from the audience rose. Not angry, not confrontational, but direct. Do you forgive yourself? Justin froze. It was the only question he hadn't expected. The one question he hadn't asked himself out loud. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe that's why this still hurts. Maybe that's why I react the way I do. Maybe I'm still trying to earn a forgiveness I never gave myself. The audience fell silent, not tense silence this time, but the kind that fills a room when truth finally lands. Whoopi's face softened, truly softened now. Then start there, she said. Start with yourself. Because forgiveness begins with you, not the world. Justin nodded, swallowing hard. A moment later, the stage manager whispered urgently through the host's earpieces. We have to cut. We're wildly over time. But nobody moved to end the segment. Not yet, because the story wasn't finished. Justin looked at the panel, then at the audience, and spoke again quieter than before. I didn't expect this today, he said. But maybe I needed it. Sunny smiled gently. Growth starts where comfort ends. Justin let out a shaky breath. Yeah, I'm seeing that. And then, for the first time since he walked onto the set, he smiled. A real smile. Small, tired, but real. Whoopi returned to her seat, her posture easing. Justin, she said, her voice calmer now. Thank you for staying. A lot of people would have walked out. He nodded. I thought about it. We know, Joy muttered under her breath, earning a ripple of laughter. Justin chuckled softly. A release, a quiet exhale of the pressure that had been tightening around him since the first question. Formed like storms gathering in the distance. Some headlines called it bravery. Others called it unraveling. Everyone called it unforgettable. By the time Justin left the studio, his phone was buzzing so constantly that he silenced it, shoved it into his jacket pocket, and walked out with a kind of quiet that suggested both relief and dread. As he stepped outside, cameras flashed, paparazzi already alerted. Justin, did Whoopi cross the line? Was the show unfair to you? Whoopi leaned in once more. Now here's the real question. What will you do with this moment? Justin thought about it. I'll carry it, and I'll try to do better. Not perform better, be better. That's all anyone can ask, Whoopi said. The audience applauded, loud this time, united, carrying the weight of everything that had happened in the past 40 minutes. The highs, the lows, the tension, the explosive truths, the unexpected vulnerability. The kind of interview that daytime TV is never prepared for, but never forgets. The stage manager signaled wildly for a cut to commercial. Whoopi finally nodded. "We'll be right back," she said, her voice steady, composed. The cameras faded to black. But the story had only begun. Within minutes, clips of the exchange hit social media. People in the audience had already uploaded them before the segment even ended. Hashtags exploded. Comment sections lit up. Fans argued. Critics debated. Supporters praised his vulnerability. Others questioned his motives. Think pieces. "Are you still standing by everything you said?" He didn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. Because he knew the world would have its say first. But for the first time, he wasn't hiding behind crafted lines or a glossy image. He had been raw, and messy, and painfully honest. And whatever came next, he could live with it. Because the truth, the whole truth, was finally out. And now, the world would decide what to do with it. And he would decide how to move forward. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Justin pushed too far, or did Whoopi give him the reality check he needed? Drop your opinion in the comments. I want to hear every perspective. And make sure you subscribe to Stage View for more explosive, dramatic, cinematic deep dive stories just like this one.